We're live. Welcome to Megavision Episode 2. New name, same show, new set, same host for now. Joining me today is La Presse columnist Patrick Lagacé.
Right.
You've also written for the Globe and Mail. If you're an Anglophone in Quebec and you don't know who Patrick Lagacé is, take a time machine, go back 6 years and slap yourself in the face. There are a few people in this province better at explaining Quebec to Canada and better at explaining Quebec to Quebec.
I told you when I accepted this interview to stop making me blush, but you're making me blush. Thank you.
Recently, or last year, your paper found out after a somewhat lengthy courtroom battle that the police had been watching you.
Yeah.
They had 24 court orders to monitor your iPhone, 3 that tracked incoming and outgoing telephone calls and text messages, 1 order to track your whereabouts using the GPS chip on your device. I guess I just have one question. Have you been importing large quantities of cocaine into the country? Are you the head of a criminal syndicate? Why were the police spying on you?
Because I guess I was doing my job, which is to report on society.
Yeah?
And among my points of interest is the police.
Yeah?
And over the years, I've written often about the police department in Montreal. And no, I haven't been importing any amount of any kind of drugs. But that's where it bit, you know. I was just doing my job. And they chose to use criminal means of investigation against, my profession.
So my understanding is, let's imagine a universe where we never found out the police were spying on you. The goal was to find out who your sources were inside the police department. Or one of the goals, I think, was find out who's leaking you information.
Well, they started investigating some police officers who were suspected of wrongdoing.
By the way, it's your turn.
Oh, true, sorry. And so they started investigating some police officers for alleged wrongdoing. Some of these police officers were charged, and among their matters of interest, if you'd like, they saw that me and some police officers were talking, which doesn't mean anything. Really.
Yeah.
Okay. And so they decided they devised a theory. They invented a theory that they presented to a judge, in support of these warrants, that a certain police officer was leaking stuff to me. But moreover, their theory is that I was a conduit for scoops that I would give to other media outlets also. Like
so
Le Journal de Montréal, our main
You're going to your competitor with the scoop.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And which is ludicrous.
It seems far-fetched.
So there you go. So seeing that we had contacts, they decided that this police officer was doing something illegal, and they decided to monitor me. It would be easier. And of course, this is almost unheard of in this country, and this is why it was such a big thing. It doesn't. It doesn't have anything to do with me, if you want.
Yeah.
It has to do with the job I'm
You're
doing.
a means to an end.
There you go. So they decided it'd be simpler to just tap my phone, if you'd like, and that's what they did.
So, I think a lot of people, it's a little flimsy, so be very careful. A lot of people, I guess they would look at this and wonder, why should I care? They didn't listen to your phone calls. They didn't see what was in the text messages. What's the big deal? It's just a little bit of light spying.
Okay, if journalists do not have sources, if journalists' sources are tracked with criminal investigation means, there is no journalism. And why should people care? If there is no journalism, people in the citizenry will have to rely on press releases to make up their minds about important debates. And as you know, Chris, when you rely on press releases to make up your mind about anything, you rely on bullshit. You know?
Yeah.
So if you want to find out the real situation, if you want to find out what's really going on, of course, press releases can be useful. But you want also strong media and strong journalism to enlighten and inform the citizenry. I love this word in English, citizenry.
Citizenry is a beautiful word.
So that's why people should care.
I guess maybe taking it one step further, if the police would succeed in rooting out people within the organization who disagree, people within the organization who leak to the press, people who are essentially whistleblowers, if you get rid of all of this, and not only get rid of it, but you get rid of it using these means that are pretty extreme, what does that do to the organization? Like, let's pretend that we never found out. They were never caught doing this, and they were doing this to other journalists as well. Vincent Lacoche is one of them.
But the SQ had been monitoring in the past years other journalists by getting their phone records. Yeah. So, and that, we would never have found out about the SQ thing were it not for the SPVM thing.
Yeah. So, if we would have never found out, what does that do to the institution of the police?
It ensures that.
By the way, you're up.
Oh, sorry.
That's fine.
It ensures that this organization will never do any real introspection.
Yeah.
Organizations usually, I think, change not because they want to, but because they have to. Whether it's because of circumstances, or whether it's because there's an investigation, or because journalists start looking at how this organization functions. And you know, I put myself in the police's shoes, and since I would say 5 or 6 years, going back all the way to the Ian Davidson affair.
Yeah.
You know, Ian Davidson was a former police officer, went into retirement, but before he left for retirement, he basically, you know, he took a little disc like that, okay, a little external disc, and he downloaded the names of every police informant.
All the confidential.
And I mean, this is a snafu of biblical proportions.
A lot of people could get killed if that got out.
But how is it that someone can just take the list of every police informant in the city and basically leave with it without anybody knowing, without any red flag or red light going up? Mm-hmm. This is how the police. This is what Montreal police allowed. There was, and after that, you know, the media reported on that, and I reported on that. And I gave much details about the hunt for this guy, and I know that the police hated the fact that us journalists got a hold of that story. Yeah. Us journalists gave a lot of details about that story, and they started getting paranoid at this time. Paranoid about who is talking to the media. Yeah. So for a number of years, there's been, I mean, stories that were hair-raising about how sources within the departments were tracked. And you know, if you're sitting at home, you might say, yeah, well, it's a good thing that the police is trying to track down who's talking to journalists. It depends what the police is talking about. Yeah. If the police is talking about dysfunction within the department, it's a good thing for the citizenry. Yeah. You know? Well,
I guess the thing is, you have two ways of reacting to, again, sorry, you're up.
Oh, oui.
It's my weird tick here. You have two ways of reacting to bad news or criticism. Yeah. And one is to sort of shut down into yourself and get defensive and say, no, nothing is ever wrong. Yeah. And the other, which is admittedly a lot harder, is to take a hard look at yourself and say, we could do this better, we could do that better. Because in the case of Ian Davidson, where you have hundreds of informants, if that got out, had he been able to sell that to a criminal organization, let's say the best case scenario, no one gets killed, but all of the information going to those informants gets cut off. Yeah. What is that? It almost makes it impossible to investigate organized crime.
There is no equivalent in North America of a police department, major police department, losing its list of informants. For that, there should have been firings. Yeah. For that, there should also have been, I think, at some point, some kind of criminal investigation to see, you know, this is criminal neglect, you could argue. The only criminal investigation that there was beside the fact that, whom did Mr. Davidson try and sell his list to, the only criminal investigation was trying to find out who spoke to me. The SQ came to me in 2014.
That's right, yeah.
And tried to shake me up into giving up my sources. That's the kind of investigations there was.
And then they circulated a rumor, someone circulated a rumor saying that you were cooperating.
I was giving good cooperation, which is very dangerous.
Yeah.
If
I'm a source of yours and I hear that rumor, I get really nervous and maybe I do something stupid.
Of course, and this is a typical technique of investigators when they try and shake up, small-time drug dealers into ratting out on their bosses, for instance. And so I got really pissed, of course, and I wrote about that. But, if you take an organization-centric point of view, of course, it's bad for the police when people within the department give stuff to journalists. If you take a society-centric point of view, it is often very good for society's sake that people within organizations like the police would take it upon themselves and tell the truth about stuff that's not working within an organization.
Well, I guess, and again,
it's
it is you, this goes into maybe a bit of a broader question about, I've known a lot of really good cops in my life, great cops, and really smart, reasonable people. But the hardest thing to ever get out of a cop is an admission that other cops do bad things. It's some will, but often the reaction is you know what, double down, do it again. Often the reaction is well, you don't know, you're not a cop, you could never understand what we go through, and therefore that shuts down the discussion.
Yeah.
We can't have an honest discussion about what works and what doesn't. And I guess in the end, that's all you're trying to do, right?
Look, I've reported on the police department from different point of view. Sometimes it was police brutality. Sometimes it was, allocation of resources and stuff like that. It's true that police officers tend to be very defensive when you question other police officers' snap judgments, for instance.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Which one should I do?
I don't know. I'm wondering. We're getting into the actual engineering part of it. Neither of us went to Polytechnique, so...
No.
This is a third-year course.
There you go.
At Poly.
So...
Sorry, so you're saying snap judgment.
Snap judgment. But you know what? Because I had sources, because I had police officers talking to me, they would oftentimes explain things to me that would make a lot more sense than when the official version of the police department would come out.
Yeah.
Because I had, and I have, ongoing conversations with police officers, they sometimes can influence my judgment. And I have found myself a couple times explaining controversial actions of police officers. I would say, better than the department itself.
Yeah, you use a little bit of empathy. You say, look, here's what they go through, here's how process works, whatever. And in the end, you give a fairer account of the truth.
Because it is officers...
You don't have nefarious intent.
No.
And maybe that's the assumption. The police assume you just want to embarrass them.
One example. A police officer is faced with a man wielding a gun, a knife, sorry. So for the general public, the officer's life is not threatened. And when the officer shoots and kills this person, the public will say, why didn't you shoot in the legs?
Yeah.
Why didn't you shoot in the air to give him a warning? Why didn't you try to wrestle him down? Because I have police officers talking to me on an ongoing basis. For instance, I'm semi-educated into police matters. And then you find out they're trained not to shoot people in the leg, not to give a warning shot. They shoot in the mass. And also, they have this, in their when they're facing someone with a gun, with a knife, they have this 10-step rule. If the person with the knife steps into their bubble, their 10-step bubble, according to their training, and the training is based on numerous incidents. they determine that their life is in danger because it takes something like a second and a half for them to get stabbed.
Yeah, to close that distance
and then, you know, because this has been explained to me before an incident, for instance,
yeah,
I can write about that stuff.
yeah,
If anybody talking to me is criminalized or potentially will be criminalized, these things will not be explained to journalists. And in the end, I think it does not serve the
it doesn't do
department
you
well.
favors. It doesn't do the police favors.
No, exactly.
We operate out of assumptions, often that are flawed, because I didn't go to police academy.
No,
you didn't go to police
exactly.
academy.
We're all, you know, in French we say, on est tous des généralistes.
Yeah.
We're all, journalists, usually, sometimes we have little specialties,
Yeah.
you know, domains where we have some kind of specialization. And to me, the police is like that. I speak to a lot of police officers, it educates me, and sometimes I can, because of that, I can call people, you know, last second, last minute, and say, is this correct? And sometimes police officers, because they have confidence in me,
Yeah.
will say, you know what this guy did, you know, maybe being videotaped, the police officer
Yeah.
being videotaped, arresting someone, this was not right for this and this
Yeah.
reason. If I never call anybody, if police officers get the message that talking to a journalist might land them in jail or facing criminal charges, like the department, this is what I think, is trying to send them as a message, nobody will ever talk, but in the end, it will not be good for the police department.
Well, look, I think that's as good a note as any to end on. I would just maybe ask you as a parting thought. Just right now, there's a parliamentary inquiry. We succeeded. We're too good at it. There's a parliamentary inquiry right now examining exactly the situation that led.
Public inquiry.
Public inquiry. Examining this situation of journalism and our sources.
It just started. Yeah.
It just started. What is the best outcome for you to come out of this?
The best outcome would be for journalists to have some kind of a protection for their sources. It is a special and it is an essential relationship, not for journalists, but for an informed citizenry. So in the end, this is what I would like. And it's always a good thing for institutions to get an X-ray from time to time, and this is what the police is getting right now.
You don't punch the doctor in the mouth because he told you you have cancer. You fight cancer.
You don't try to put the biologist who informed the doctor in jail because you don't like the news.
That's the better metaphor. Thank you so much for dropping by.
It was very fun.
I'm going to turn off
Merci
my machine.
beaucoup.
Thanks for tuning in.
Where's my check?
Ah,
I
damn.
should have asked for it.
You
before.
should have.